All right, so healing by design. We're in the B's. We're on blood pressure. We'll mainly talk about high blood pressure today, but I also do want to mention low blood pressure because it actually is a common issue for a lot of people as well, although mostly all we hear about is the high blood pressure. So I will start with a quick prayer. Father, we thank you for this time together. We ask for wisdom related to the body that you designed. We seek to honor you and your design and how you created us to function. Teach us how to align with you, Lord, in restoring health to our bodies. And we just thank you for your love and all that you do for us. And pray in Jesus' name, amen. So, the intro, blood pressure. As with all the classes, my heart would be, there's a couple of main reasons I felt like the Lord highlighted for me to do this series, this A to Z series. One is just, there's not a lot of information out there from a biblical standpoint, understanding health of how God designed the human body to function. And so that's one reason I do it, is that there's cause and effect. There's always a reason everything happens in the body. It's not some random, magical, mystical thing that we don't understand or know. We can't just blame everything on genetics. There's a real reason everything happens. So if we know that there's a cause, then we know that there's a way to reverse it or to make it better. So that's one reason. Really one of the main reasons, though, is to... I have a heart for all people. Most of the people I work with are Christians. They're believers in Jesus, as I am. And it's to get off the man-made medical system. It's to understand that healing and health only comes from God, our Creator. He's given us everything we need to be healthy. If we have health issues, okay, but God has the answers. God is the solution, not a man-made medical system. And there's a lot of Christians out there who don't think it matters that they're taking pharmaceutical drugs and don't think it matters that they're running to the doctor for every little problem. And I think it's a problem. And if things start to change in this world, which they already are, they're getting worse. We don't want to have to be reliant on these man-made chemicals and medications. We want to be healthy in our bodies, and we want to find ways to heal ourselves naturally without having to use this other system. So that's really my heart. It's so, from a Christian standpoint, that we understand that there are ways to heal the body naturally. We don't have to use the man-made system. And then on the other side of the coin, for those who don't know Christ as Savior, that you would know that the God who created you is the only one that can heal you. And if you do get healing through the natural things of this world, it's because there's a God in heaven who's responsible for that. Hope that makes easy enough sense. So let's start talking about blood pressure. I've talked about it so many times, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, but the cardiovascular system is amazing. I mean, very simply, we have 60 plus thousands of miles of a cardiovascular system. We have arteries and we have veins and we have capillaries, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of miles long, and it's designed to supply our body with nourishment. That's how we get nourishment to every cell and every part of our bodies, through our bloodstream. And that's also how we get toxic waste removed from our body, is through our bloodstream, out the lymph, and then out the elimination organs, kidneys, colon, different areas. But the life of all flesh is in the blood. I quote that all the time, Leviticus 17:14. The blood sustains its life. The life of all flesh is in the blood. And so the bloodstream is crucially important for human health, and it's just the way God designed it. And so we have to keep the bloodstream healthy. So one of the easiest ways to know that we have an imbalance in our bodies and an imbalance in our cardiovascular system is through all of these issues we have going on with blood pressure. High blood pressure and low blood pressure. Again, there's cause and effect. There's always a reason this is happening. But the heart, that's this little organ that's the size of the fist, is personally responsible for pumping blood through tens of thousands of miles of veins and arteries and capillaries to nourish the body. So there's something going wrong when the heart is having to work so hard and the cardiovascular system is so taxed that our blood pressure's going through the roof, and we're having to think we have to take pharmaceutical drugs to correct it, when that's not the best way to correct it. Again, there's an imbalance there. We have to figure out what it is. Having high blood pressure obviously is extremely dangerous. Not only can you feel bad from having high blood pressure, the symptoms I just listed, a few: headaches, migraines, irritability, dizziness, ringing ears, arrhythmias, so like irregular heart rhythms, a flushed face, nose, fatigue. People get numbness down the side of their body, sometimes the left side, fatigue, weight gain, swelling, edema, swelling fingers, swelling toes. All of that can happen from high blood pressure. So clearly there's a sign of a problem, but it's clearly dangerous. It's dangerous. We know heart disease used to be the number one killer. Now they say cancer kills more people than heart disease. So it's right up there, number one, number two killer of people of heart disease. And again, blood pressure is kind of an early warning signal that something's clearly out of balance. But it can lead to deeper issues. It can lead to blocked arteries. It can lead to heart disease. And so if we have high blood pressure, we want to figure out why, and we want to reverse it, and we want to do it in a healthy way. So when you get a blood pressure reading, what's the what do they say is the ideal blood pressure reading?
120.
120 over 80. That's normally what they say. 120 over 80 is kind of about our guideline there. So what does that even mean, right? So the top number is called the systolic number. And basically what that means is as blood is pumping, as the heart pumps and blood is pumping through your arteries, that pressure during the pumping action, that number is the pressure on your arteries during the pumping action. That's that top number. The lower number, which again ideally is around 80, 70 to 80, 80 is kind of the benchmark. That is the diastolic number, and that is the pressure on the arteries at rest, between heartbeats. So when the heart's not beating and pushing blood, just that resting pressure that's on the arteries, that's the lower number. Okay, so we know people go get their blood pressure and it's 135 over 85. It's slightly elevated. But once you start getting into the 140s, it's common for people to be in the 160s. I've seen people that are well into the 200s and they can't get it under control. On the top number, the systolic number. The diastolic number, same thing. Like should be 80 or even just below 80. Once you start getting into like 90 and that number, extremely dangerous. When your heart's not pumping and it's just that resting stress on your arteries is over 90, that's extremely dangerous. So they call that hypertension or high blood pressure. And again, that's super common. But then on the other end of the spectrum, we have low blood pressure. And so there's people who chronically have blood pressure 100 or lower instead of 120. And that lower number instead of 80 is in the 60s or even into the 50s. And that's also a major problem because that's a sign of extreme weakness. The blood not pumping efficiently, the blood not even getting to the extremities. And so either way, either if it's high or if it's low, it's a problem. Again, we mostly hear about high blood pressure, and so we'll mainly focus on high blood pressure. But we want to talk a little bit about low blood pressure too because it is important. When you're talking about low blood pressure, you're talking some of the same symptoms, dizziness and fatigue. A lot of people, they stand up real fast. They feel like they're going to black out. They get dizzy, like they're going to pass out. Low energy, extreme weakness. A lot of times with low blood pressure comes panic attacks, stress, worry, anxiety, a lot of those types of issues because it's so strongly tied to adrenal function. And we'll get into more why we have high blood pressure and low blood pressure. But that number, that 120 over 80, just so you know what that really means, that 120, that high number, is mostly an indicator of the health of your adrenal glands in your body, which sit on top of your kidneys. And that lower number, that 80, is the function of your kidneys. So you'll see this whole blood pressure reading, the systolic over diastolic, is really an indicator of how well the fluid systems of the body are working and the hormones are working through this area of the adrenals and the kidneys. And we'll talk a lot about more of that. And when you get into, which I'm going to talk about next, the drugs that they're using in the pharmaceutical industry, you'll see almost all the drugs that they're giving people are related to forcing an action or something to happen related to the fluid systems of the body, the hormones, or direct action on the kidneys. So, God speaks to us through our bodies. He wants us to be aligned with Him and function the way He designed us to function. And if we functioned the way God designed us to live on this earth, we'd probably never know what high blood pressure is. I can pretty much guarantee you there's plenty of cultures all throughout history who lived their entire lives into their hundreds and never had verbiage or a concept of high blood pressure. Now that seems weird to us because everybody seems to have issues and everybody's talking about it, but it's a result of our lifestyle. So like I said, it's always cause and effect. These weren't issues before when people were living on the earth, living off of God's provision, and weren't living the lifestyles that we're living today. So this is something we've created through our lifestyle choices. But the main point I want to make here is that there's cause and effect. There's a reason we have high blood pressure. It's a result of negative circumstances, an imbalance in the body, something missing or interfering with the heart and the cardiovascular system to work the way God designed it. And it's really important to know that because, especially as Christians, again, anybody, but especially as Christians, we got to go, okay, God designed me. I believe in the living God. And if there's an imbalance in my body, I want to be in alignment with how God designed me to work, whether it's through food or nutrition or herbs or hydration or what do I have to do to correct this issue? And we're not doing that. We're not honoring our bodies. We're not honoring God. We're running to the doctor. We're getting a pharmaceutical, petrochemical drug to manage our blood pressure. We're going on about our lives like everything's okay. And I think that's a mistake. So if God's speaking to us through our bodies, how do we realign ourselves? How do we correct the imbalance naturally? What pharmaceutical drugs do, all of them, is they work against God's design. They work against the way God designed the human body to function. So for me as a Christian, it is not okay to live your life taking a pharmaceutical drug to cover up and mask the problem in your body that we're not addressing. Now, other people might have different opinions, and that's perfectly okay. And I always say there's a time and a place for an antibiotic or this and that to save somebody's life. But trust me, God has everything figured out. We just haven't chosen Him. We've chosen this man-made system to manage our sickness and disease. And so, if you look at the main pharmaceutical drugs used for high blood pressure, do any of you know what some of the common ones are? What's the class of drugs used for high blood pressure? Nobody knows any of them? Yeah, well, that's one of the drugs. So we have three main ones that I know of. We have calcium channel blockers, we have ACE inhibitors, and we have beta blockers. Calcium channel blockers, beta blockers, ACE inhibitors. Now, what did I just say? All petrochemical, man-made pharmaceutical drugs work against God and work against God's design of the human body. Calcium channel blocker, blocking something from working in your body the way it's supposed to work. ACE inhibitor, inhibiting something in your body. Right? Beta blocker, blocking something from happening in your body. So if I'm just thinking of this from a logical standpoint, as anybody, but again, I'm, my viewpoint Christian, God designed me, my blood pressure is high, clearly there's a problem. Why would I take a petrochemical pharmaceutical drug to block something from happening in my body? And what I'm actually doing is blocking what God's natural response is to this problem in the body. Does that make sense? Yeah. God's natural response to this problem is for you to have a headache or to have high blood pressure or to have something going on in your body. He's letting us know that there's a problem that He wants us to respond to. So by taking the man-made pharmaceutical drug, we're basically ignoring it. we're taking a chemical that forces an action to happen on the body, whether that you like it or not, and we're ignoring the signals that God is sending us that there's a problem. Now, of course, if you have your engine light come on and you clip the wire just to ignore the light and because it's annoying and you don't ever fix the problem in the car, the car's got a problem, it's still going to break down. And it's the same thing with high blood pressure. You're not solving anything ever by taking a man-made chemical, pharmaceutical drug, to solve your problem. So let's look at them real quick just so you can get an idea of what's going on. Calcium channel blocker. It's a common one. What's going on? Well, there's an excessive amount of calcium in the bloodstream. It's not supposed to be there. Calcium's constricting. It constricts the blood vessel. That's going to raise blood pressure. The question is, why is there an excessive amount of calcium in the bloodstream? Stress, anxiety, poor diet, acidic bloodstream will force the body to pull calcium out of the bones and put it into the bloodstream to offset the pH of the body. Again, cause and effect. There's a reason there's an excessive amount of calcium there. Why don't we deal with the health issue and not take a drug that blocks calcium from getting into the muscles? So what a calcium channel blocker drug does is it blocks calcium from getting into the muscles and the arteries of your heart. Is that smart? Does it make sense to block calcium, a crucial, critical mineral, from getting into your muscle tissue? This is why all pharmaceutical drugs have a list of side effects this long. They're chemical poisons. They don't solve anything. They work against God's design. So all you need for a calcium channel blocker is to deal with why you have excess calcium in your bloodstream, which is probably stress or poor diet. It's going to be one of the two. And the best thing to offset too much calcium in the bloodstream is magnesium. You probably have a magnesium deficiency as well. So I've seen a lot of people with calcium channel blockers and have them do some basic magnesium. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month later, blood pressure is perfect. They don't need the drug. They don't teach us this stuff. Again, the goal for them is to have lifelong customers. So the lie is that you have high blood pressure, I don't know how you got it, you're going to have to take this drug the rest of your life, because their goal in every circumstance is a lifelong customer. That's the system we've created. And so they don't want you to know that you can just take magnesium, maybe change your diet a little bit, and have perfectly no issues with blood pressure, which again is common sense, because throughout history we didn't have these issues. We've created them today with our lifestyles. So you think of another one, a beta blocker. What's a beta blocker blocking? It's blocking epinephrine. What's epinephrine? Epinephrine and norepinephrine. It's related to adrenaline, which comes from the adrenal glands. So what's happening one thing I try to explain to people with these drugs, if you're taking these medications and they work, it quickly tells us what the problem is in the body and how to correct it. You've got a calcium channel blocker, there's too much calcium, you need magnesium, you need to figure out how to get your calcium levels down through diet change or whatever. If it's a beta blocker, what it's doing is the drug is blocking epinephrine from your bloodstream. Well, why do you produce epinephrine and norepinephrine and adrenaline? Fight or flight response. Stress. How many have heard that stress is related to high blood pressure? All right, doctors say that. Oh, it's high stress. Well, they say that, but they don't really have any idea of what that means or what's actually happening in the body. But stress is a real chemical response that happens in the body. And when you're constantly stressed out and you're constantly producing adrenaline when you don't need adrenaline because you're not really running away from danger, you're causing the heart to go out of control because of all the extra adrenaline release. So that's all a beta blocker does, is it blocks adrenaline from being released into your bloodstream. But again, God is telling us that there's an imbalance and a problem in the body, which is why I'm having to release all this adrenaline into the system constantly. The third one is the ACE inhibitor, which I don't fully understand, but it blocks something in the body called angiotensin II, which is related to, again, adrenal hormones, aldosterone, but it's also related to potassium, sodium levels in the body. So this is blocking an enzyme that affects potassium, sodium ratios in the body, also aldosterone. I don't know what else it blocks or inhibits. But again, if these drugs are working, quote unquote, it's a sign that there's a problem in these areas. And again, if you look at all three of these, you can see where the problem is with high blood pressure. 95% of the time is a problem in the fluid systems of the body and the release of hormones out of the adrenals. It's this adrenal kidney area. So that's where we have to focus if we want to have healthy blood. We want to have healthy blood pressure, high or low. It's related to this adrenal kidney issue. The only exception that I know of that is if you have actual blocked arteries. If your arteries, which is, think of heart disease, think of strokes, think of heart attacks, so common, sadly, today, the full blockage of the arteries being closed off, that there's been issues for many, many years. Let's just say that. That doesn't just happen overnight. But most of the issues with high blood pressure are easily corrected, which is why it's so sad to me that tens of thousands of people are on these pharmaceutical drugs. And, the Lord's really been highlighting this lately to me, and I haven't spoken out about it too boldly because it's hard, because I don't want to offend people, but I also want people to understand the reality of this. But, this is my heart, and so I'm just going to share this a little bit, but I don't think we understand how jealous God is for us and for our bodies and everything we do to our bodies and everything we put in our bodies. And it only makes sense because we're made in His image. He wants us to be pure and clean and holy vessels. Are we pure, clean, holy vessels if we're using petrochemical, petroleum-based pharmaceutical drugs that have a side effect list this long that were never intended to go in God's holy temple, and we just think it's okay and we take those the rest of our lives? I don't think that's okay. And that's what God's put on my heart. And what we're doing is we're actually being controlled and manipulated. We don't realize it. We're being lied to and said, we don't know why you have high blood pressure, it's just the way it is. We're being lied to and said we have a pharmaceutical drug as an answer, which it's not. We're being lied to and told that we have to take it our entire lives. What else is being manipulated is our mind, our thoughts, our belief system, all of it. We're being controlled. You know what else is being controlled? Our money. Right? How many people spend thousands of dollars on these drugs that have no value to human life? And again, we're putting them in our body and we're thinking it's okay. And I will stress again that one of the main reasons I do this class, and this is a big one, because tens of thousands of people are on high blood pressure medications and thinking it's okay. And who are you in bondage to? You're in bondage to the medical system. You're in bondage to it. And what happens if things get tough? What happens if, we start to have civil war in America and unrest in America, and all of a sudden these drugs aren't available and you can't buy them all over the internet like candy? And your blood pressure's so out of control that it's only managed by manipulating your body through a man-made pharmaceutical drug. You know what it is in the Bible? It's pharmakia, it's sorcery. I'm just going to say it. That's what it is. A lot of people know that as Christians, but the word drug, just so you know, droog, D-R-O-O-G, is actually a word that comes from, I want to say the Netherlands. I'm trying to think of the language. Danish, I think it is. But anyway, it's a word that means dried plant. The word droog, means dried plant. All we ever had throughout human history is God's plants. Now, even witchcraft has taken God's plants and uses them against God, right? That's Satanism, that's witchcraft. How much worse is it that we're trusting men to take petroleum and manipulate it and put these chemicals in our body that destroy human life? How can we not call that pharmakia or sorcery? It's exactly what it is. I don't know if I've said that in a class yet, but I'm just saying it on this one because God put it on my heart to do it. And it's because so many thousands of people are being manipulated by these drugs and they think that it's okay. And again, if your blood pressure is so out of control that the only way you can manage it is through believing in this man-made system of drugs and chemicals, and then all of a sudden things get rough and your drug's not available, and it's the only thing you have, A, your blood pressure is going to be so out of control, you're going to have no clue how to bring your body back into health and back into balance because you've relied on a man-made system and you haven't relied on God for your healing. That's one. And two, if you want that drug to manage your blood pressure every day or every week, how much is it going to cost you? How much is it going to cost you when it's not available? You think drugs are expensive now? Wait till this what's the word I use? This spider web of deceit called the medical system, with millions of people on these man-made chemical drugs that are controlling their bodies. What's going to happen when these drugs aren't readily available anymore? They're going to be sold on the black market for tens of thousands of dollars. So I'm just encouraging people to get off of them because you don't need them, and God has a better way. And I'm going to show you how simple blood pressure is. I mean, I have seen, I don't know how many people, I've seen dozens and dozens and dozens of people with high blood pressure, and I will honestly say that I can remember one guy that we really, really, really struggled to get his blood pressure down. We're still in the middle of trying to solve that riddle. But because I believe and trust so much in God and cause and effect, I know that there's a solution to it. We just haven't found it yet. But that's one out of, I don't know how many, dozens and dozens, 100+ people probably. Most of the time it's super simple. And most of the time it happens so fast that they have to get off the pharmaceutical drugs because the pharmaceutical drugs are manipulating and forcing action on the body. They don't heal the body naturally. So when you start healing the body naturally, the pharmaceutical drugs are still going in there doing what they do, but they're artificially making your blood pressure too low because of the forced chemical response on the body. Does that make sense? So when you start doing the right things, your blood pressure starts dropping naturally. All of a sudden the drug makes it go too low. And you have to get off the drug. You don't have a choice to get off the drug. Of course, sometimes you go back to the doctor, and anyway, I don't want to get into that, but they don't understand that, and so they make you stop doing the natural stuff that was working because it's affecting the way the drug works. I mean, talk about a crime there. I think I hit that hard enough. But the goal, again, is to get off this system. Because God calls us to what? Freedom. Freedom. And freedom isn't challenging. Freedom is just living a proper lifestyle, especially related to health and nutrition. Not doing what we want, when we want, living life how we want, getting it all out of balance, and then just taking a drug to cover it up and just going on about our lives. And that's what we've done for way, way, way too long. So again, God's heart is purity. And I think this is a big area that's been completely missed in the church in understanding purity and what we're doing to the bodies in the Holy Temple. So why do we get high blood pressure? Now that I've stressed you don't want the medication, you want to get off it, let's talk about what you actually do about it, right? So the main reason, and I'll just say 4 out of 5 as a rough number, 4 out of 5, the reason people have high blood pressure is fluid imbalance in the body. Simple dehydration and a lack of electrolyte minerals. Which ones are the most important? I don't want to say one's more important than the other, but they're all 4 important. The electrolytes: calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium. And I can't really rank them because some people need more. They have sodium issues. Some people are magnesium deficient, which is almost everybody. A lot of people are potassium deficient, but you need the electrolyte minerals to have proper fluid balance. So a huge portion of people, again, I would roughly say 4 out of 5 people, you get them off of coffee or soda or whatever things they're drinking. Make sure they're drinking enough water a day, at least 2 liters of purified water a day. Add minerals back into their water to get their bodies hydrated. Blood pressure starts to look really pretty. Again, magnesium being the main one I've always used for that. And so let's talk about hydration a little bit because I think it's crucially important. I'll give you a story first. I lived in Las Vegas for 7 years. I worked at a health food store. We had people come in all the time with crazy, out-of-control high blood pressure. And, they wanted a supplement. They wanted some herbs or something to help with their blood pressure. I said, okay, that's all fine and dandy, but let's try this first. As I was always tell people, go home, buy some sea salt, Himalayan pink salt or Celtic sea salt. Go home, start putting a teaspoon of sea salt in a gallon of water and drinking that. Make that part of all the water you drink. In other words, all the water you drink all during the day is going to be basically salt water. Now, not super salty so that it's gross, but just enough in it to hydrate you. Person after person after person would come back. Their blood pressure was perfectly fine. They didn't need the medication anymore. They felt more hydrated. They were going to the bathroom less often because a lot of people are drinking water, but never getting hydrated because there's no minerals in the water. So their skin looked better. And I just heard story after story after story about people healing and not needing their blood pressure medication because they were dehydrated and they were sodium deficient. Now, how ironic is that when every doctor on the planet tells you that sodium is bad for you and salt is bad for you, and if you have high blood pressure, run away from sodium? Well, why is that? Well, we've talked about that a dozen times, but it's because man-made table salt is a chemical, and it's not designed for human ingestion. No human being should ever eat table salt. But salt from the earth, the way God designed it, with 80 plus naturally occurring minerals, will hydrate you, will balance your fluid systems, will balance your kidneys and adrenals, and it's actually the most important thing for adrenal function is salt or sodium. How many people crave salt? How many people eat chips and pretzels and all kinds of salty foods and don't realize that they're actually craving salt? Craving salt is a symptom that something's going on in the body. Again, we're mainly talking about high blood pressure, but if you want to talk about low blood pressure, salt. Salt in water is the best thing I've ever seen to help people increase their blood pressure who have low blood pressure, to keep them from feeling so tired, so dizzy, so weak. And it's because it strengthens the adrenals. That sodium is very important for strengthening the adrenals. So one method I use with a lot of people is called the SOLE method, S-O-L-E. There's Himalayan salt stones by a company called NHI, Natural Health. You take the salt stones, you put them in a mason jar full of water, and you let it sit for 24 hours, and you basically have salt water. And each morning, you take a teaspoon of that, put it in a glass of water, and drink it. And that starts your morning hydrated. It boosts your adrenals. It makes you feel more clear and focused. And again, if you can get hydrated and get away from the morning coffee and instead do morning minerals and get your system hydrated, your body can let go. Because what happens when you're dehydrated? Everything in your body constricts. Yes, like a cactus in the desert. Cactus get really excited when it rains, and they suck in a bunch of water. But then as it doesn't rain for week after week after week after week, it constricts to hold on to the precious water that it has. Your body does the same thing. So dehydration is a main reason people have high blood pressure. And again, you're on pharmaceutical drugs, damaging your body, believing your doctor, spending thousands of dollars, relying on a man-made system when you just might be dehydrated. And people just think that's crazy because it seems too simple. It's not crazy. It's because we're completely misled and misinformed about the truth of why people have high blood pressure and why people have health issues. So the first thing I always do with anybody that I see that has high blood pressure, I always focus first on minerals and hydration. The first mineral I usually focus on is actually magnesium, because everyone's deficient in magnesium. Magnesium is a vasodilator. It opens up the veins and arteries, so it allows blood to flow better. Magnesium is a crucial electrolyte mineral for the communication of the cells within the arterial system, for cellular exchange of fluids within the cells. Magnesium, all the electrolytes are crucial, but magnesium is such a huge deficiency that I usually recommend people do the foot soaks, the magnesium oil foot soaks. And that has been life-changing for so many people with high blood pressure. The foot soaks, I've actually seen blood pressure drop so quickly that they got off of their medications, their pharmaceutical drugs, in a few days because they were just so chronically magnesium deficient. What else is magnesium good for? Stress, anxiety, worry, fear, all those symptoms related to poor adrenal function, because the magnesium is crucially important for the adrenal glands as well. So magnesium oil foot soaks. I use the Health and Wisdom magnesium chloride oil. I don't recommend Epsom salts because they're actually dehydrating. They don't replenish magnesium to the body. So I recommend magnesium chloride oil, Health and Wisdom. There's other companies out there, but that's kind of the source, and so that's the company that supplies it to most people. Actually, everybody else kind of repackages it and sells it for more. The other company is Calm, which is just a powdered magnesium. and you put it in a drink. It tastes good. People do it when they wake up, before bed. Again, it just vasodilates, helps blood to flow better, helps you feel more calm and relaxed. Super, super simple thing to do. I mean, God forbid the pharmaceutical industry had people find out about magnesium, because it'd probably take away the need for half of all those billions of dollars of revenue of pharmaceutical drugs out there. Just simple magnesium. It's such a crime that we don't know these simple, simple truths. So the next mineral would be potassium. Potassium is crucially important for the bloodstream. A lot of people with high blood pressure take potassium and it drops. You can buy potassium salts. We have one that you just add to like a quart of water and you just drink a little bit of each day. But you can get it in bananas, of course. Potato skins is actually the highest source of potassium. I didn't know that before, but I learned that. Potato skins, highest known source of potassium. Kiwi, there's all kinds of fruits and vegetables that have potassium in it. All your green leafy vegetables have potassium in it. We just don't eat enough of those anymore. So again, just to reiterate, if you want to take the first step to getting off a high blood pressure medication, get hydrated. Get off the coffee, the sodas. Green tea's fine, maybe don't go crazy on black tea, but green tea's fine, but you can do other herbal teas. And put minerals in your water. We don't have good water today. Bottled water is not going to do it. Reverse osmosis and distilled water is not going to do it because there's no minerals in it. You're made of minerals. Lord God formed man out of dust of the earth, Genesis 2:7. We must have minerals for our bodies to function. Without them, they don't function. So that's step number one. The other thing I mentioned that you can do for, let me talk about the other main reason I see people with high blood pressure. If it's not the hydration mineral thing, which it always helps regardless, because everybody needs minerals and they need to be better hydrated. So it's a great place to start for anybody. The second big one is insulin resistance. Sugar problems. My mom allows me to use her as an example, so I do. She was one of these situations where, and again, I know I sound like I don't know how else to do it, but it's kind of upsetting, especially when it's your own relative and your own family member. It's upsetting to me the way the medical system works for all people, but it's different when it's your mom. Like, she goes in, she gets a pharmaceutical drug for her high blood pressure. It doesn't work. So what do? Change it. Give her a different one, right? Now she's on 2. They don't take away the first one, they just add one to it. Her blood pressure's still not under control. What do you think they do? Add a third one. Blood pressure's still not under control. What do? Add a fourth one. How many was she on? 5. 5 pharmaceutical drugs. Okay? Am I saying this in a mean way? No. But the truth is, most doctors are clueless. Because all they have to treat people with is drugs. It's a guessing game. They don't know what they really need. If they have any educated guess, it's based off of blood work, which they have very poor ways to test for adrenal function. They might have some ways to check for kidney function, because again, this blood pressure is a kidney, adrenal, mineral issue. Do they have good ways to check for mineral? Horrible. Why? Because they're checking for minerals in the bloodstream. Why is that a bad test? Because the life of all flesh is in the blood. The body robs Peter to pay Paul to make sure the blood has the right things. Your whole body can be degenerating and failing, kidneys failing, adrenals not working, and your blood work looks okay. You know how many people come to me like, oh, my liver's fine, my kidney's fine, my blood work's okay. No, it's not. Because the body will fight to keep the blood healthy. The body will fight to keep calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium levels normal in the blood, because if they're not, you're in big trouble. So it's a horrible test. So they don't have any good tests to see what drugs people need, so they just throw drugs at them and hope they work. And if they work, hey, we solved your problem, you're welcome. And if they don't, they up the dose or they try other drugs, and it's really sad. It shows that, like, we go to medical school, but we learn nothing about the human body. We learn nothing about how it works based on how we're designed by God. And there's good people out there, good doctors, good Christian people out there that have no understanding of how the human body works. And so she's on 5 high blood pressure medications. Blood pressure is still out of control. She didn't want to come talk to me because that's embarrassing. But she got up the courage to do so because she was scared. And fear is often a motivating factor for a lot of people to want to get well. And so she came and talked to me. We sat down, we ran some tests, we talked about it, and I came to the conclusion that my mom was insulin resistant. So remember, going back, I'm talking about sugar and insulin resistance. And again, they don't have great tests for that. In common blood work, you can ask them to check insulin, okay? But usually that's not a common thing that they check unless you ask them to do it. And they won't often even check that unless they have some kind of assumption that you might be diabetic. So it's something they don't regularly check anyway. She was clearly insulin resistant, okay, which means all of the consumption of processed complex carbohydrates, grains, sugar, starches over the years had caused insulin resistance in her body, which I won't get into what that is, but it's basically her bodies were not responding and processing any extra complex carbohydrates entering her body. And so what that would do is every time she'd eat bread or pasta or crackers or some kind of a grain, it would spike her blood pressure. Coffee would spike her blood pressure. Remember, we talked about the dehydration issues. She had it all going on. She had the dehydration, she had the insulin resistance. And so what we did seemed extreme, but I basically cut out all grains, all sugars, starches, carbohydrates out of her diet, asked her to walk 30 minutes every morning, and make sure she was only drinking water. And in less than 2 weeks, she was on 0 medications. Less than 2 weeks. So again, this just shows how sad our medical system is to have no idea how to actually get people well without a pharmaceutical drug. And even the pharmaceutical drugs aren't helping. They're not even managing some people's issues. And a lot of times it's just a guessing game. And it's a guessing game playing with people's lives. I mean, you know, if you give somebody a pharmaceutical drug and they get a disease from it or die from it, it's just, well, we tried our best. There's no repercussions to it. So it's like Russian roulette, taking pharmaceutical drugs. So if we want to live our lives that way, I wouldn't encourage it. So yeah, 2 weeks, my mom's off five high blood pressure medications. Over the course of 6 months, she loses 80 pounds. She's exercising every day. She can't get enough bike riding and walking, and she's in her 60s. So anybody can do this anytime. It's a choice. It's a choice. Unfortunately, why do we choose the pharmaceutical drugs? A big one, I think, is misinformation. I think that's the biggest reason. We're told by doctors, A, we believe our doctors, which is a big, big mistake. And two is we aren't given any alternatives. We aren't given any other understanding or reason why we have high blood pressure. And we think the pharmaceutical drug is our only solution. And again, that's what the system wants, because that means you're a customer for life. You drink water, change your diet a little bit, start walking, put some minerals in your body, they no longer have a customer. I do. Okay, that's kind of a joke. But nobody, and I always say, today we need to supplement, just because everything's been so destroyed. But I would be happy if we could all just return back to living on the farm and we didn't even need stores with supplements in it. Let's just live the way God intended us to live. That's my heart. But at the very least, let's get off of feeling like we're believing the lie that we need a pharmaceutical drug to manage our blood pressure. And so that's why people do it, is those two reasons. I'd say the third reason is that they don't want to change. They might actually learn the truth, but it's too hard to change diet, too hard to exercise, too hard to stop drinking excessive amounts of coffee or whatever the reason is. And it's sometimes fear that actually drives them to change their body. I hope in that fear that we develop, which I have, we develop fear of the Lord, fear of the right things, because in our brokenness and our sickness, hopefully we're turning to God. And again, I'm just going to say it. Non-Christians and Christians alike, Christians might be worse than the non-Christians of choosing man for their solutions when it comes to their body and their health. Not choosing God. Outside of prayer, it's almost like we have no concept or understanding of how God heals. I know that's a pretty bold statement, but I believe that's true. Outside of prayer, most Christians do not believe or understand or have any concept of the healing power of God. Why? Because we want an instant miracle, all of our problems go away, so that we don't have to deal with all of the mistakes that we made in our past. And God's not giving everybody a free pass. Okay, He really wants us to understand how to steward our bodies and to align with Him properly in health. And I really feel like that's my main message. So, I hit the two main reasons people have high blood pressure. Dehydration, lack of minerals, specifically electrolyte minerals more than anything. Insulin resistance. What causes insulin resistance? Poor pancreas function. Why does the pancreas stop functioning? Poor diet, mainly. What are the main foods that mess up the pancreas and insulin? Grains. Yeah, processed complex sugars and grains. So if we're going to talk about diet and how to reverse this, and again, why do so many people have high blood pressure and want to take a drug and pretend like everything's okay? Because we don't want to change our diet. We like the things we like. If people just went on a raw fruits and vegetable diet for 1 month, I can pretty confidently say that 95% of people, I don't want to say 100% because I know there'll be an exception and somebody will call me on it. 95% of people would have no issues with high blood pressure and would not need a drug, period, if people went on like an all raw fruits and veggies diet. Why? Because it takes out the grains that force the pancreas to produce insulin, that damages the pancreas, that causes insulin resistance. It takes out the meat that's high in uric acid, that damages the kidneys and the pancreas and weakens digestion, and it's hard on the adrenals. You're going to get hydrated because you're going to have lots of water-rich fruits and vegetables. It takes out all the bad stuff, and it's going to hydrate your body and only put in the good stuff. And it's going to solve all of these issues. Now, you might need to take a few extra minerals or something else, but in general, if we're going to look at diet change exclusively, it's switching away from grains, dairy, high meat consumption, and your processed sugar. That means agave's not the healthy choice for sugar. That doesn't mean, well, I make cookies every day, but I use organic cane sugar. That's okay, right? No. Okay, God didn't design bags of processed sugar. He designed sugar cane. And it's really hard to overeat sugar cane if you've ever seen it. It's a stick. So we're doing things abnormal to the way God designed us to live, even in the area of sugar, because we want to keep eating sugar and these things. So I really would stress more than anything, if you want to get off of high blood pressure meds and just the minerals, hydration thing isn't working, get off of grains first. That'd be my first recommendation. That would mean, oh my gosh, what does that mean? That means most of what most people eat. That means a lot of what we all just ate for Thanksgiving 2 days ago, right? Grains would be like bread, pasta, pizza, crackers, baked goods, cookies, muffins, brownies, pie, all that stuff. Now, does that mean you have to not eat that ever for the rest of your life? No. Does that mean you can't have 1 day of having some of that at Thanksgiving? No. This isn't legalism, okay? This is understanding that abuse of those foods all day, every day, leads to sickness and disease. Fair enough? Okay? I think a lot of times we get so legalistic about it that, we don't think we can ever eat another whatever again. I can never have a piece of bread again. Well, that's not true. But we need to heal our bodies. And to heal our bodies, sometimes it means getting away from those things for an extended period of time. And so that would be my recommendation for diet, is getting away from the grains, the dairy, the meat, the sugar, focusing on raw fruits and vegetables. Now, I don't promote vegetarianism, but we do eat too much meat. The uric acid is hard on the kidneys and the adrenals. The uric acid is what causes gout, gouty arthritis. A lot of kidney issues we hear about is all related to this excess of acidity in the body, which comes from high meat consumption and it comes from grain consumption. So if you can get away from those foods for a while, just do it like a 30-day raw challenge or whatever you want to call it. If you really want to accelerate the healing process, do a juice fast, right? Just fruit juices or just vegetable juices, but ideally not buying the stuff in the grocery store. You juice your own. And if you really, really wanted to go after it, because remember I mentioned like the kidneys and hydration being such a big issue when it comes to high blood pressure medications, do a grape fast for 7 days. Only grapes. Do watermelon when it's in season. I would challenge anybody with high blood pressure to eat only grapes and watermelons for 7 days in the summer and tell me you still have a blood pressure problem. I would bet a lot of people could get off their medications because it's so healing for the kidneys. Now, it might take longer. You might need herbs. You might need other things to open up the kidneys to help with rehydration. It doesn't all happen in 7 days, but I'm letting you know like how quickly we can reverse these issues. I always say how desperately God wants us to heal, and He'll heal our bodies if we can get out of our own way. That's my joke. Like, God wants to heal us, and He wants us to live well into our hundreds and die of old age, fulfilling His purposes, if we can get out of our own way, right? And isn't that the gospel message, that we'd get out of our own way and that Christ would live in us? Okay, right? That should be like Christianity 101. It's that we stop doing things in our own mind that we think are right, and we allow God and Christ to live in us. And I think health and nutrition is an important aspect of that we've ignored for the most part. So that's kind of diet in a nutshell. The quickest way, I just talked about that, juicing, watermelon fasting. Really what it comes down to, a big portion of this is taking the stress off of the body. Again, why would we have high blood pressure? Why would the arteries be so congested that we have all this pressure on our arterial walls? Because you know what happens when you have pressure? I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but we have pressure on our arterial walls. What does that lead to? Damage of the arterial walls, which leads to the body forced to repair it, which it repairs it with cholesterol and calcium and other things floating through the bloodstream, which leads to blocked arteries, which is atherosclerosis, which leads to heart attacks and strokes. So this is why high blood pressure is a big deal, because it can lead to heart disease. And so many people, you hear that somebody had a heart attack or a stroke and they were in their 50s or they were in their 60s and it came out of nowhere. But most of the time they had symptoms related to it. They had a chronic high blood pressure. We know. It's not like these things just happen out of thin air. Again, God talks to us through our bodies, but we haven't learned to understand how the human body works. So we kind of ignore it, or we don't understand what's happening when it's actually happening. So taking stress off of the kidneys, off of digestion, off of the bloodstream will allow it to work better. Who's seen those documentaries out there? Who's seen, I don't know, food, what are some of them? Food Matters, Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, right? Super Size Me. What are the other ones? May I Be Frank? Hungry for Change. There's so many of them out there. And you know what most of them are doing when people are sick? They're changing their diets. They're eating raw fruits and vegetables. They're juicing. They're doing enemas. They're cleaning out their holy temple that's toxic. And they're getting well. Why aren't Christians doing it? Good question, huh? No idea. It's because we've been deceived. We've been deceived. And not thinking it matters. And of all people, not to think that our body matters. Christians. It's mind-blowing. I just went to going to a marriage conference, and they talked about how the God who designed us, the God who designed male, female, and designed us to fit together to make another life, something we call sex, isn't talked about in the church. I mean, what a crime, right? One of the most fundamental, important principles of God's design and procreation is almost a shameful thing to talk about in the church. And so is health. You go to potluck, it's cookies, candies, desserts, soda pop, nobody cares. And everybody's sick. And everybody's dying prematurely. And everybody's crying out to God and wondering why. It's almost like we think because we know God, like we get a free pass to do whatever we want. Is that a horrible thing to say? I think that's for some reason, it's almost like we should be immune to that because I know God, right? I shouldn't be sick. I know God. How could I have high blood pressure? I know God. I talk to Him every day, right? But we're sick. People are sick. And so we need to wake up to the truth that what we put in our bodies matter, how we live our lives matter. And so a couple of other things you can do for high blood pressure. Sunshine, connecting to the earth. I've talked about this in classes before. If you're barefoot on the earth, your blood platelets do not stick together. They flow well. So you can get earthing sheets that you can sleep on that lowers blood pressure, that normalizes cortisol levels and heals the adrenals while you sleep. Or you can just go outside and be in the sun and be barefoot on the earth and go play in the streams and rivers like we used to when we were kids, hopefully. Exercise. My mom, another example. I'll give a perfect example. My mom, because she was so borderline insulin resistant and the issue she had, if she came off just a little bit, it would spike her blood pressure. That's how borderline she was. And so let's say she ate a piece of Ezekiel bread, one piece in the morning. It would spike her blood pressure. Now for the average person, that wouldn't. She would go bike ride or get on her rowing machine and exercise for 30 minutes and check it again, her blood pressure was perfect. Why? Because she was insulin resistant. The sugars that she ate in those complex carbohydrates got burned when you move. Sugar's not trapped in the bloodstream anymore and damaging and affecting the body anymore. So it lowered her blood pressure. So my point is that a combination of eating well, exercising, doing the things we know we're supposed to do, you can quickly and easily reverse these things. If you truly want to get off of being reliant on a man-made medical system, you can choose to do that. But you first have to believe that there is another way. There is an alternative. The other thing you can do is manage stress, of course. So decreasing stress is going to help your adrenals. It's going to keep the adrenaline from pumping all the time, and that hormone release is what causes high blood pressure a lot of times. In low blood pressure, we see stress events cause a release of adrenaline into the body and then a crash because the adrenals aren't able to recover. And then people feel totally wiped out, tired, fatigued, and they can't function. If you've ever known anybody in a stressful situation completely shuts down, they can't function, that's adrenal fatigue, adrenal failure. It's the low blood pressure, the 100/60 or lower, the chronic low blood pressure. You need to build the adrenals. So how do you reverse low blood pressure? Sea salt in your water, things that increase circulation. Licorice root is a great one. Cayenne pepper is a good one if you can tolerate spicy things. But building the adrenals, the best thing to use is herbs. Chinese tonic herbs are probably my favorite for that. Ginseng, probably the most powerful. I have a product called Shindong Ginseng I give to tons of people. It's a blend, 10-to-1 concentrate of 6 different kinds of ginseng. You talk about something that's going to boost your hormones and your adrenals, your hormonal system. Ginseng, #1 herb used in Chinese medicine. It's going to make you feel better. It's going to bring your blood pressure back up. I mentioned licorice root. Another one of my favorite herbs for the adrenals is holy basil. Another one that's really good is called jogulin. A lot of people haven't heard of jogulin. Gynostemma is the Latin name, but it's jogulin, and it starts with a J, Jiaogulan. And it is rapidly becoming one of the most popular herbs now in Chinese medicine. They're comparing it to ginseng because it helps lower blood pressure, it strengthens the heart, it works against insulin resistance and sugar issues. It actually doesn't taste bad. It grows abundantly and prolifically all over the place like a weed. So jogulin's another good one. But there's all kinds of good adrenal herbs. But I just wanted to mention a few of those because what's cool about the Chinese tonic herbs is they're going to help lower blood pressure when you have high blood pressure because they bring the body back into a calm, relaxed state. But also if you have low blood pressure and you need to increase adrenal output and function, they actually help strengthen and increase vitality, energy, stamina, and endurance. So the great thing about the Chinese herbs is they do both. Listen to Mike's class he did a whole class on adaptogenic herbs. And he kind of goes through all the details of how that works. And so those are very powerful herbs to take for both high or low blood pressure. And so I will just close. It's been about an hour. My question is what system are we going to rely on? When we have health issues, be it something we think is simple and not a big deal like blood pressure, it's a big deal. Because again, God's letting us know that there's an imbalance. Are we going to cover it up with a man-made drug that has all kinds of side effects and rely on the system that keeps us in bondage to a drug with our money and a false belief system? Or are we going to actually choose God, change our lifestyles, honor our bodies, get hydrated, exercise, change our diet, and never ever have to worry about this blood pressure thing again? Which system are we going to choose? That's my question today. Because I've seen, again, dozens of people with blood pressure, and it's very, very simple if you make just basic lifestyle changes to get off of these drugs and to heal your body. And let me just say that if you're on these drugs, they do have a forced, strong action on the body. You don't just quit them cold turkey. I didn't mention that earlier, so I just want to share this. You do the right things, and one of two things will happen. One is your blood pressure will start to get too low, which means you don't need the pharmaceutical drug. When you do the right things for the adrenals, for the thyroid, for those on thyroid medication, for people with high blood pressure, when you do the right things, the drug is still forcing something to happen in your body. It drops too low. You can wean off the drug. In general, I recommend people do for about a month, do the right things. Eat right, maybe wait till after the holidays, right? Get hydrated, minerals, eat right, maybe try a 3-day, a 7-day juice fast or watermelon fast or grape fast. I mean, who can't eat grapes for 3 days? That sounds like fun. So do these things. And then either one, if your blood pressure medication is dropping too fast, start to cut it in half and start to reduce it because you're not needing it. The other thing is you might not notice your blood pressure drop low, but after a month you might notice that you cut the medication in half and you realize, I'm perfectly fine. My blood pressure is great. I see that all the time with people. Just out of caution, there's nothing wrong with caution, they cut it in half. They come back, yeah, I cut it in half, and I'm perfectly fine. I check my blood pressure, it's perfectly great. It's 118/78. And so the very next few days, they cut it in half again, maybe down to like a quarter. Oh, it's perfectly fine. They realize they just don't need it anymore. People are shocked to think they don't need their medication anymore. Why don't you need your medication anymore? Because you aligned yourself with how God designed you to function. Your body's working the way God designed you to work. And trust me, if you get out of balance again, He'll let you know. Because He loves us. It's not a bad thing. It's because He loves us. He wants us to be well. And He designed our bodies to respond to imbalance through pain, through these other health issues. It's just an invitation to respond to God and how He designed our bodies to work. Amen. Oh, you know what I didn't mention, I'll just mention real quick, is how to clear blocked arteries. I have it in the top 10 thing at the end, but I have some enzymes called neprinol. They're systemic enzymes. I have people start with 1 twice a day on an empty stomach and increase to 5 and 5, which is 10 a day. That'll actually clear out a blocked artery. Because people can have poor blood flow and high blood pressure because the arterial system's actually blocked. Now again, most people, that's not why. Most people, it's minerals, hydration, kidney issues. So that'll clear the arteries, though, the neprinol systemic enzymes. L-arginine, which is an amino acid, will open up, vasodilate, and clear the blocked arteries. And then the other thing I didn't super stress that I probably could have went into a lot more detail on is kidneys. Because think of the pharmaceutical drugs that are often given people for high blood pressure. They're what? Diuretics. They're water pills. They're forcing excessive water and fluids out of the body. Why do you have excessive water and fluids in your body? Your diet. Too much uric acid from too much meat, or too much acid from too many grains. That's creating imbalance in your fluid system and forcing these fluids out of your kidneys. And if it can't keep up, your kidneys get stressed out, and they give you a drug to actually help that out. They don't tell you to change your diet, but they give you a drug that's a water pill to force fluid out of your kidneys. Because the excessive amount of fluid and acid buildup in your kidneys is backing up your arterial system, causing high blood pressure. Does that make sense? So you can take natural diuretics. You can take minerals like potassium, helps as a natural diuretic. Parsley, uva ursi. There's all kinds of kidney herbs. There's all kinds of good products out there that act as natural diuretics. You don't need a pharmaceutical drug. You can heal your kidneys, unblock your kidneys. We have a kidney cleanse tea, and that's something I often give people along with working with hydration and minerals. I give them herbs or a tea or something to clean out blocked kidneys. because if your kidneys are blocked, your fluid system will back up. It will cause high blood pressure. Okay, so I'll end there. Any questions? Whoa, yes.
Can you name those? Or you went you said licorice root, holy basil, and you said something that had 6 different.
Ginseng.
Like the item that you had here.
Oh, Shindong Ginseng. Nong, N-O-N-G. Well, you've never heard of that?
No.
Me either.
And that's something you.
Yeah, we have it here. Shindong Ginseng. Now you can buy, we have a formula called the Great Adapter, and it's a blend of 6, 7 things. It's got ginseng and schisandra berries and all that. But the Shindong Ginseng it's special just because it's a concentrate and it's a blend of different ginsengs.
And the Great Adapter, and that's for low and high blood pressure?
It will work for low and high. Yep. That's the power of herbs that God created that naturally know what your body needs. Were you going to ask the same question?
No. Do millet and quinoa actually make the blood more acidic, or make the body more acidic, since they're alkalines?
Millet and quinoa are borderline. So if you were going to choose a grain, so that's why Body Ecology Diet, she recommends millet, quinoa. Buckwheat's actually pretty acidic. But millet, amaranth, quinoa, they're kind of borderline on the acidity scale. And so if that's the only grains you're eating and you're not eating all the other grains and wheat and baked goods and breads and pasta and pizza, and then that's going to be okay. Now, if somebody was diabetic or they had a major pancreas issue or whatever, they might even avoid those grains, just because they are going to create a uric acid byproduct. They're going to have create an acidic waste byproduct, and they can be a little stressful on the kidneys and the pancreas. But that would be more extreme situations. But for the most part, those would be better choices.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Well, we have 2 more. What I think I'm going to do, I don't even remember what next week is. Does anyone know? Bladder infections, blood pressure. It should be bone. Okay, so we're going to do bone health next week. And then what I think I'm going to do in 2 weeks, instead of doing candida, is I'm going to do arthritis, which is the one I missed. And then we'll be current. And then when I get back in the first week of February, we'll start into candida, cancer, we'll get into all that stuff. We'll get into the C's.